All right, everyone, we can take a seat. We'll get started here. Did you see the Jehovah A? The sun just came out as we started. It's a blessing. Welcome, everyone. My name is Melanie Yazzie. My name is Melanie Yazzie. I'm an assistant professor of American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. But this is really my home. I did my PhD here in American Studies. I studied under Dr. Jennifer Dennett-Dale, and I was on faculty in the Native American Studies and the American Studies Department here at UNM, so it feels like a homecoming here. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennett-Dale, for organizing this event. Yeah, give her a round of applause because she did a lot of it almost entirely on her own. You know, and Jennifer is a matriarch. You know, she's the commissioner of the Human Rights Commission for the Navajo Nation, and like an OG Indigenous, Native feminist. The first Diné person to ever receive a PhD in history, actually. Yeah. So we're surrounded today by legends. And I get to sit up here with a legend. It's thank you to Kiva Club, all current and past leaders for the really powerful panel and the words you just shared with us. You know, those words are a blessing and a prayer. We had a really amazing session last night about Larry that Kiva Club sponsored here at UNM. It was very emotional, but it was also very powerful. We had a young 16-year-old, he's here, one of my clan relatives, who's taking up the mantle, of the struggle today, trying to change the curriculum, the racist curriculum in Albuquerque public schools. Is trying to find support for going to the Roundhouse next week, right? Next week, and has a petition this week, and has a petition on change.org, I think, and maybe we can share some of that if you would like to sign that petition. There's a QR code, you can scan it and find that petition, but we would like to provide her as much support as possible because, as Larry would want us to do, he wants us to keep it going, right? I'm going to introduce our Che here, John Redhouse. If you want to introduce yourself too, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm John Redhouse. You worked with Larry Casuse from August of 1972 to late February 1973. Today's a very important and historic day in which we remember and honor a fallen warrior that made the ultimate sacrifice for his people. And I think that exemplifies, that represents total commitment, total sacrifice. And I think that we can use his example of that, the true measure, the true meaning of his sacrifice, and of course our work for future, for present and future generations, and to also honor and remember past generations, our ancestors, who without their struggle and their fight and their resistance and sacrifice, that we are here. So I think that we should have a moment of silence for fallen warriors, Larry Casuse and Robert McKaidene.
Jay, for setting the tone for our conversation. This is a Joel Jones lecture from the American Studies Department. It's an alumni event. So just wanted to give a shout out to American Studies for helping to provide the resources to hold this gathering. I'll get the pitch for the event we're doing tomorrow later. I just want to talk to John. I don't want to advertise for UNM because UNM doesn't claim this history. This is I'm going to introduce myself as a professor, but you know, John is this very, for me, as a Dene intellectual, and as a Dene, I mean, I see myself as a revolutionary, actually. Really, somebody I have looked to. I've read literally everything he's written. You know, I spent many hours and days in his papers in the Center for Southwest Research here. And John is like a true, like, people's intellectual, right? He's an intellectual who comes out of the movement. And it's very, there's a difference when you're somebody who is part of the history of the movement and you're trying to narrate, right? You're trying to tell the story of that movement. It's very different than the kind of knowledge and the intellectual kind of enterprise that's attached to the academy. And so what I would hope for today is for us to have a conversation as relatives and as comrades, and to see you as an elder, you know, in this long struggle and this tradition that we both belong to of indigenous resistance, of Native liberation, and as Dene people, you know, who carry forward this tradition that our people have been a part of for hundreds of years. I wanted to start off maybe if you could just share a story or two about Larry. You know, many of us here, some people here knew Larry, many of us don't. I think many of us we claim Larry, you know, those of us who are in the movement claim Larry. His family, thank you so much for many of the intergenerational Casuse family who's come here today. You know, you have your own stories and your own way of relating to Larry. And I'm just interested in listening to you, John. Just tell a story or two. So many people talk about how Larry's life ended. But Larry was, you know, I wrote the introduction to the book that David Correa authored, that Larry's an affirmation, right? He's not a negation. He's an affirmation of the life and the strength of our people. And I just want to hear about Larry's life, because he was, from all accounts, a very intelligent, very loving, gentle, but very strong relative. He was really a good Dene relative. So, if you have any stories you'd like to share about Larry?
Well, we're in this movement because we care about our people. We love our people. There's an undying love that we have for our people. That's what drives us, and it goes to the heart and the sacredness of our work. And Larry embodied that in mind, in spirit, in soul, and in body. And he sacrificed himself for the people. Emmett Garcia had to be stopped by whatever means necessary. It wasn't a first course of action. For 7 months, we tried peaceful and legal means in order to make the necessary changes that need to be made. The situation was going from bad to worse in Gallup and McKinley County and on the Navajo Reservation. And Larry was very intense. He was very goal-oriented. He made important changes in our movement. When we were trying to keep the Indian Center, the Gallup Indian Community Center, from becoming taken over by Emmett Garcia. Emmett Garcia led the charge to bring about a non-Indian takeover of the Gallup Indian Center, because he saw what the Indian Center was doing in terms of activism and being part of the change, the beneficial change, to help our people in ways that we can, in ways in which people can see and feel real change. That's what we're about, because conditions were intolerable, and The concerns that we had soon became demands because the situation demanded it. Again, things were going from bad to worse. And Larry, when he burst on the scene, so to speak, in early August 1974, he had a certain light around him, about him. You could feel the energy, you could feel the force of his personality and his character, and the leadership that he showed at such a young age. He turned 19 in late July 1972, and he was a bright rising star. His base at that time was the Gallup Indian Community Center, and he was one of the students employed by the Southwestern Indian Development. And there must have been 40 students, maybe 50 students that were working on various issues and problems in northwestern New Mexico, including San Juan County, full gasification threat at that time. And Larry was into all of that. It wasn't just about the Indian Center or about the Gallup Ceremonial, the exploitive Gallup Ceremonial, or the Navajo Inn. He was getting involved in efforts to reform and develop Navajo tribal government. He joined the Navajos for a better tribal government when we exposed a secret meeting held by members of the chairman's office and 2 coal gasification plants. They were meeting behind closed doors at the one we were in at that time. And so we went out there and demonstrated, and through fact sheets and documentation, we exposed the secret negotiations that were going on at that time. It would steal our land, our water, and our coal, and destroy the environment and culture. Larry was part of that. I remember him with his hat and his picket sign, very provocative picketing we did back then. And he wrote about his thoughts on coal gasification and the appropriate uses of coal back then. He was foresighted, and he was articulating what many people are saying today: to keep fossil fuels in the ground. According to traditional Navajo belief, there's a Navajo deity, a black deity that represented the coal, and that the coal should remain in the ground. Roberta Blackgoat, the legendary matriarch at Big Mountain, said that coal is the liver of Mother Earth, and it needs to stay in place in nature. But the Navajo tribal government sold out to the coal mining and coal power plants and coal gasification companies, and now 40, 50 years later, you see much calamity affecting our environs and the spirituality that's surrounding the 4 sacred mountains, Navajo Reservation, and our ancestral homeland. And the message was keep it in the ground, just like with the uranium. If his message had been heeded, and he was a leading voice. He wasn't the only one, but he was the leading voice of that movement back then. Much of the environmental ecological ills could have been avoided. Now we face the crisis of different change, as seen through climate change and various other things that we were talking about in 1972. We talked about all the carbon coming out of those power plants and what it would do on a cumulative basis, on a long-term cumulative basis. And of course, we weren't anti-development. We were pushing for solar and energy way back then. We were pushing for it, but there were alternatives. And that many of those leases could be renegotiated, reviewed and renegotiated, so there could be at least better economic terms for those leases that were difficult to cancel or to avoid and nullify because of the bad lease making made back in the 50s. Still, at least there could be some economic materials that could materialize and that could be used to invest in things like solar and wind. He talked about the Gallup ceremonial and the exploitation going there. And the protests began in earnest in 1969 by Indians against exploitation. Michael Benson, Eddie Brown, June Tracy, Linda Hubbard, Gloria Emerson, and others who leafleted and made a big impact. Made a big impact on that issue. It made it a high impact issue. It made the national media and press, and so people began to take what we were saying seriously. Michael Benson, who was the main leader at that time, a young man, and he went to college prep in the Northeast and was going to the exclusive Westland University a year before they closed. Was a leader. He was very intelligent, very articulate, very visionary and foresighted. He showed great leadership at a very young age, and I would say that he was the main leader in that really ceremonial protest campaign from 1969, 1970, and 1971. I joined that movement in 1970. In 1969, I thought I was fairly politically aware, but like most young people, I was 17, 18 years old, and you think ceremonial, I think, party and snagging and that sort of thing. And there were three social opportunities there. You had the Flagstaff powwow, also an exploitative event, and then you had the Gallup ceremonial, and then the Navajo Tribal Fair. I looked at it in its terms until Hostine Mike passed out his leaflet, and college carried guns, and that's when I think that set the tone for that protest movement, because he talked about when our grandfathers carried guns, we had to be dealt with, we had to be respected, they had to respect our nation, they had to respect our territorial integrity, we had to be respected in the border towns which are situated in occupied Navajo lands. They've got to respect us as a people. And so I think that also influenced Larry's thinking too. And it's not radical thinking. When your back is against the wall, as Dennis Banks said, you got to fight back. And it's time to strike with the decisiveness of a rattlesnake. You got to defend and protect what you should, the sacred and the ancient. Catherine Smith in 1979, when she got a Winchester and fired some rounds over the BIA invading forces that were trying to take away her livelihood, the sheep and the goats, the livestock there, they backed off. They had to reckon with the righteous anger and outrage of the elder grandmother there. She didn't want to do it, but they kept invading. I remember Catherine Smith in 1977 when we started fighting. This was before the Big Mountain movement started, about 6 months before. And she had gone through the various administrative and political remedies to seek redress, to seek justice. And then finally it came down to the point where she had to make them back off. White same thing. Harvey Brigade, they started invading sacred territory in the J21 and J23 areas of the Peabody Lacing picked up a rifle and fought in defense of his homeland. And he was arrested, and federal marshals, the FBI, and all that. And he was in prison, but he took a stand. So it's not it's not extraordinary that people are forced to do that they are driven to do that, just like at Wounded Knee. This would be about the third day of the liberation of Wounded Knee 50 years ago. You have to do that. Dennis Banks was a big part of that. And if you look at the Navajo resistance from 1540 to the early 1960s, 1963, we resisted the Spanish, the Mexicans, and the Americans. They took up arms, we had to take up arms. And it was fighting a 300-year plus defensive war. You do what you have to do. So in that context, killing the enemy is not a crime. So we need to put things in that kind of context. And when you exhaust all your administrative remedies and your people are still dying in great numbers, you have to take desperate action. You do that because you care about your people, you love your people. Flesh of the same flesh, and blood of the same blood. And we'll fight to the death to ensure a better life and future for our people, because that's what it's all about. And so, these roots of resistance, roots of refusal go way back, and they continue up to modern times. And they have a historical and geographical context to that. It was only when Kit Carson came out and Henry or James Carleton, the Brigadier General, whatever he was, looking for gold and silver in the Navajo province, Navajo homeland, cast a covetous eye towards our land and our resources, and that was the geological imperative for the invasion. The Navajo Roundup, the scorched earth policy, the death march to Bosque Redondo, and the internment, which several thousand Navajos died at Fort Sumner, that concentration camp. It had a higher death rate than 2 German concentration camps during World War II, Buchenwald being one. David probably knows the other one. It starts with a D, Danichu or something. So our people died in great numbers over there. And so we came back. We had to sign this this treaty, this land cession treaty. Exiled over there. So the Homestead Act was passed in 1962. All those railroad land grants were passed during that time, but we were exiled from our homeland. And so, there was another geological imperative to build a transcontinental railroad, the Atlantic Pacific Railroad, to access coal, to provide access coal to the gold in California and the silver in Nevada. So the Navajos had to be relocated out of the way. Not because they were necessarily hostile and warlike, but because they wanted access across our lands, because they were unceded, unconquered lands at that time. Again, the 300-year plus war, and so that too needs to be celebrated. The resistance. My grandfathers carried guns; they had to be reckoned with. And we fought. We fought a long time before there were just too many of the enemy, and the settler colonists, here to wipe us out, to replace us. And when you're faced with extermination, you have to resort to those kind of means. You look at 97.5% of our population since 1492 wiped out, disappeared. European invasion, disease, and about the same amount, 97.5% of our lands taken away in what's considered the continental United States. There are 12.5 million indigenous peoples, estimated approximated 12.5 million indigenous peoples living in the boundaries of what's considered the continental U.S. 1492 by 1890, less than 250,000. What happened to the remaining 12,000 or so, 12 million or so? Genocide. And so, when you're faced with genocide or survival, you have to take a stand. You have to take a strong stand. And Larry's, when he saw our people dying in great numbers, physical destruction of a significant segment of our population, which fits the definition of genocide, being subject to those conditions that result in the physical destruction of that population group, we're talking about genocide. And so we must fight that with our lives. And so, I could go on, but Melanie, amplify on that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's an incredible history. You just spanned about 500 years. And I'm interested, we were talking, John and I talked a little bit before this, kind of like, what should we talk about today? Trying to work it out. And, I forgot to say I'm a co-founder of the Red Nation when I introduced myself. And, several of our comrades are on the road back from the 50th commemoration of the Wounded Knee, the liberation of Wounded Knee, which I think sometimes when we talk about Larry and we talk about March 1st of 1973, maybe we forget what had happened, what had started just 3 days prior. And so, John, I'm interested, let me backtrack a little bit. It's hard to describe what it feels like when you're in the movement live. I think my sister Leola was trying to describe that moment in Standing Rock, that drove her to become the director of Water Protector Legal Collective, and what it means, as Arche here has said, when you really take your life into your own hands and you have to fight, right? You have to fight genocide with everything that you have. Sometimes you fight it with your life. You fight it by any means necessary, right? We say this a lot in the movement. And I talk a lot about this with people, many people, students, community members who may not have actually participated in these types of things. They don't have to necessarily be like militant things. The Red Nation gets accused all the time of being violent and militant and what have you. But it's really because we carry this spirit that, John is talking about. We take it very seriously, and we really live our lives this way. And once you encounter that and you experience that and you participate in it, it changes you completely forever, and you will always be committed to the struggle from that point forward. And so what I'm saying is that it's hard to describe in words how that feels, how these moments feel. The moments when your liberation is actually in your own hands, even though your enemy has more guns than you, has more money than you, and you're in extreme conditions of oppression and repression, and yet you still fight, right? And so, March 1st, 1973, February 27th, 1973, what did it feel like at that time, John? Like, what did it feel like to be inside of this moment in the history of Indigenous resistance?
Well, we had been following the events in South Dakota and Nebraska and other Indian territories in which there were conflict with racist war towns, Indian killings, mainly beginning in Gordon, Nebraska in February of 1972. And Russell Means and others organized about 1,500 demonstrators to demand justice in that border town. Raymond Yellow Thunder was killed by a group of tortured and killed by a group of extremely white, racist, redneck, trash, border town trash, and it's been going on for a long time. It's been going on too long. So Russ Levine's held a press conference on the steps of the courthouse. It was supposedly trying these two Indian killers, these two white Indian killers, and said, "We're here to put Gordon, Nebraska on the map, or if justice is not forthcoming, we're going to take Gordon, Nebraska off the map." And I think that too was a defining moment, and that set the tone for the border town campaign. That campaign continued on to Ojo, Arizona, which Philip Slavey, Tona Odaman, was killed by police there, another Indian killer. Again, AIM, NIYC came down and supported the local people in protest of that. They were there in great masses. And a week or so later, the Flagstaff powwow, they were an exploitive event like the Gallup ceremony. It was basically an extension of the local Chamber of Commerce. They were committing sacrilege against our religion by inappropriately showcasing the Navajo Yeviche dance, a cheapened 15-minute version of that dance. And you get white people that were in control of that, and it was a profit-motivated event that had been going on for a long time. Vernon Valcourt and Andrew Kelly Jr., Leroy Keams, Lenny Foster, Michael Upshaw, Phil Loretto, and others. Denver AIM in particular, but also 45th AIM came, and they physically shut down that event before it was going to continue on to that sacrilege, that desecration of our religion. They put their lives on the line. There were arrests. There was brutality. They were in jail for a long time. There was excess high bail, ransom put up. They had to stay in there a long time. There was a malicious prosecution, but still the resistance continued. And Vernon Valcourt again led Denver AIM down to our protest against exploitation, against the ceremonial. They were also going to show a cheap and bastardized version of the Navajo Yeviche dance. Again, white promoters were in charge of that, against ceremonial extension of the Chamber of Commerce. And we said, well, we're not going to put it. We're not going to put up with that either. It was a non-negotiable demand. We met with Emmett Garcia at City Hall. He denies that, but it was in the newspapers. The Gallup Truth Will Tell, the Gallup Independent, reported on it. Garcia said that he never met with Larry Casuse before March 1, and that's bullshit, because it is in minutes of that. It is in the official minutes of that proceeding. Paul McCall, city manager, was there. I believe it was City Attorney Bill Head was there. I think Manuel Gonzalez, the police chief, was there. And it was an official proceeding. And Garcia, a short, fat guy, sits back in his oversized chair like Napoleon and says, "These demands you presented us, it's a little, they're a little late and a little ridiculous." That's what he said. He was real arrogant. Later, he was humbled by Larry. He came to me and said that he admitted that he was arrogant during that time. But he was arrogant when he tried to affect the non-Indian takeover of the Gallup Indian Center, and then with the ceremonial, they were in league with the Ceremonial Association. They weren't going to listen to us. And then with the Navajo Inn, we raised those points of his co-ownership of that, and then, of course, the sharing of profits. And it was Ernie's, his father, Ernest Garcia, that founded that liquor establishment back at Cessville in early 1960s, and it had been going on for a long time. The conditions there just got worse and worse. But they were raking in the money, and making a financial and physical killing, because a lot of our people were dying there. But he was going to shut that down. These are our concerns, and he calls them a little late, a little ridiculous. But all the deaths and all the broken homes and all of the destruction, that too had been going on too long. And it wasn't ridiculous. It was a matter of life and death for our people. And we were deadly serious about making necessary and important changes there. Later, Emmett Garcia said that he prays for the soul of Larry Casuse every night. That's a crock of shit, because that wasn't him back in 1972. And Larry humbled him. And that was another victory, I think, achieved that arose out of that March 1st event. He had to be stopped as a businessman and as a politician. He had to be stopped because it was going to get worse. If he became a regent, the University of New Mexico Board of Regents here, he would have gone after Native American studies here. He would have gone after Chicana, Black studies, women's studies, Asian studies. He was not here to. He was not going to protect people of color, because he was profit motivated, and he was about all of the wrong things. He was about all of the wrong things, and he was getting more and more powerful. He had to be stopped, and the events of March 1st precipitated a process, a people-led process to remove them. From the Board of Regents, to remove him from the Gallup Interagency Alcohol Coordinating Committee. He was a designated chairman there. It was part of the problem, but then he belongs to this alcoholism group. He basically got himself in there. As part, supposedly part of the solution. He wasn't part of the solution, he was part of the problem. And that bullshit alcoholism committee was intended to bring in federal money into Gallup and McKinley County. What happens? It's been federal money taken in the name of the Indian, to slowly help the Indian. It just goes to supplement their general fund. We've seen that with Johnson O'Malley funds, Title IV funds. It's just a continuation of that. And what do they know about? What did they know about alcoholism? They were criminalizing alcoholism. It's a disease. It's not a crime. And they were packing in people in those paddy wagons to the point where there were some suffocations. People died being packed in there, and they were being hauled off to jail. And then they would pack those jails in where it was the point of illegal. They would put in 160 people for jails that could only accommodate, or jail cells that could only accommodate 40. So that no doubt there were some suffocations there too. Their solution at the time, to the alcoholism problem, because they also saw it as an aesthetic problem, because they want to see, drunk Indians, to destroy their mythical, tourist attraction image that they made of our people. They made of our people there and capitalized on. They call themselves the Indian capital of the world. Indian capital. That's the way they, Indian capital with an A. That's the way they spell it. They weren't paying tribute to the American Indian, and that too is a bunch of BS. And their only solution at the time was to build a bigger jail. We're talking about alcoholism rehabilitation or treatment. It was just another rip-off scheme. They see us, they see money. They don't come to give us anything. They always come to take. And you see the hypocrisy. You see the false image, the false face, where they represent themselves as part of the solution when they're part of the problem. And Garcia exemplified that with his co-ownership of the Navajo Inn and his chairmanship of the Gallup Interagency Alcohol Coordinating Committee. How can he be part of the solution and also part of the solution when they are part of the problem? The Gallup ceremonial, they advertise themselves as the Indian capital of the world, I believe about $250 million are poured in from the local Indian reservations and pueblos into the economy of Gallup. And you look at the disparity where everything about Indians at that time, and continuing make those guys richer and us staying in place of being poor. There was a survey done, I guess about 10 years ago, that showed that there were 350 millionaires in Gallup for a town that was only 20,000. It was like highest in the nation there. And you look at those millionaires, and they're obviously the people, they're part of the liquor industry. There are traders that rip off on our arts and crafts. There are sectors there that are the millionaires. And look at our people. Look at our people. That's evil capitalism, evil colonialism, imperialism. They took our land away. So Gallup could be built on those railroad tracks. That's Aboriginal Navajo land. In the land claims document that the Navajo tribe filed with the U.S. Claims Commission, we demonstrated that, or it was demonstrated that was clearly Navajo land back in 1863, 1868, at the alleged time of taking. We've been there a long time. The study of trade rings showed that the first Navajo Hogan, there's evidence of the Navajo Hogan, it was built there in 1350. And certainly preceding these settler colonies there. And hundreds, tens of thousands of Navajos have called it home. That's our land, but they take it away, because of imperialism, territorial imperialism. So those evils we're talking about, the worst and evil and excesses of capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, those are big words, but they have a reality in our daily life and in our experience and the way we see things, because we see things through the critical red lens, and that too is an affirmation. And so we need to continue with that kind of critical thinking and analysis of what the real causes and what the real nature of the enemy, the real beast, is. Again, I'm going on and on. Melanie, the voice of reason here.
Please go on and on. It's because a lot of people just don't know this history, period. First of all, they don't know it. And if they've heard it before, they often forget it. And the people who have power to tell the history purposefully erase it, they purposefully distort it, or they don't understand it. And so when they tell the history, they tell it wrong. That's just the goddamn truth. A lot of the history about the movement, about the people, these relatives you're talking about these revolutionaries and comrades, it's not correct. Because kind of the point I was trying to make earlier, is that you kind of have to be there. You actually kind of have to be there. Like 50% of revolution is just showing up, seriously. And then you actually have to be there and participate and struggle with other people in order to have a correct, critical red lens, right? From, we're just talking, let's say, about Native liberation. And you, John, you were describing Larry when Larry came on the scene. You were saying he had a light, right? There was this power and this strength. You also have that. And, many of us in subsequent generations have looked to you in that way because you really walk that path, the path that I'm describing, and you hold it down. And even today, I think this is the second time I've ever met you, we had an event. Well, what year was that? 2015 you came to UNM, I think, or 2016, something around then. And the way you speak, and I've read your writing, the speeches that you made around this time, let's say in 1974, during that long hot summer in Farmington, you have always spoken this way, all this time. And the way that you speak is so direct, it's so clear, there's no bullshit. And it's the truth, it's the language, right? And the power of their critical red lens, as you call it. And that right there, we need more of that, right? When we're talking, when we're telling the stories. Because this isn't history. We live this because we carry this in our souls for everything we do, as John said, is for the future. And so those of us who do it now, I'm 30 years your junior. Like the work that I do now and the way that I think of when I speak, right, and to share and to convey this information and these stories, I try very much to do it in the fashion in which you just did that, which is from this unapologetic perspective. And it's not, again, it's not really militant. And like you said, it's not like radical. It's not exceptional. It just is what it is because that is who we are. That is how we have always been, and that is always how we will be. And that is where that strength and that power comes from, and that directness. And I think it's former revolutionaries, especially our Dene revolutionaries. You're always being told to be peaceful and to, have manners and shit, our people are fierce, and that's why we are here. And that fierceness comes from love. And period, right? That is who we are as Dene people. And you really exemplify that, John. So I just wanted to let you know, as somebody who very much tries to follow in the tradition that you also are a part of. I wanted to pivot for a moment. When you do this work, right, so you're like a revolutionary, so you're involved in the struggle. And sometimes you're in life or death situations. And then sometimes the movement quiets down, right, until the next wave happens. And you're also somebody who wants to, because you know how other people are going to tell the story of the things that happen, they're going to fuck it up, right? And so you want to tell that story because you don't, right? You want to be able to make sure that it's told correctly and it's told from the people's perspective. And so you're an actor, but you're also a commentator. It's a weird position to be in. You've done this your entire life. And so you're so used to talking about things and doing education that is much more focused on history and politics instead of maybe like yourself. Because really when you do this work, you're taught to like decenter yourself, right? Because really what you're doing is you're doing something for your people. You're doing something for relatives who you will never meet 7 generations from now, right? I think it was Elizabeth Cookland who told us in the Red Nation that our lives don't even belong to us. Our lives belong to the future. That's a very indigenous, that's a critical red lens perspective on what it means to do the work. But I want to ask you to talk about yourself. I'm going to do the opposite of that, John. I want to hear, when people ask me about my personal story and like how I got into the work, how did I become a revolutionary, and how has that changed over the years? You've been doing this for like 55 years or something. You have stories to tell. You've gone through changes. You have seen things broken. You have seen the fire. I'm going emotional. And so you've seen all of that. And so how has that been for you? And where you are today, how do you feel having done this work all this time? and how where you are today as a revolutionary who has never budged an inch in terms of your commitment to the work.
Larry Casuse was very influential in my life, and I believe that he and others like Herb Blatchford and Gerald Wilkinson and others that they were going to do that for the rest of their lives, and they set. I think that they were the model, the guideposts, the roadmap to doing what we're supposed to do as the indigenous people, fulfill our purpose and responsibility in life. Our people come first. People say, people that say that, that Larry was psychologically sick or something, that he did that as a crazy person. I think not. Anybody that puts their people, that puts the land, the people of the land, the people of the future of the people and the land first and foremost in his life's work, and applies with the greatest amount of vigor and energy that anyone can possibly muster into his life and work, is not sick. That person is a hero. That person is a patriot. Not a patriot to his people. I don't mean the government. I don't even mean the Navajo tribe, the Navajo tribal government. I mean to indigenous and indigenous people, and anybody that has got his priorities straight, and he's very sophisticated in his analysis of our situation. I think his writings of February 3rd, 1973 show that. And that, like when our grandfathers carried guns, show in most clearest of terms the situation that we face, and exemplifies the urgency, the need, the imperative to do what we must do in the course of our work. And that is not the thinking or the mentality of a sick person. And so, Herb Blatchford, Gerald Wilkinson, and other people who were most influential in my life in making the decision to make this work, my life's work, are of the same mind. Herb Blatchford continued, until he couldn't do it anymore. And physically, he just couldn't do it anymore. Gerald Wilkinson fought to the last day. He was in a meeting when he had his heart attack and died. He too had dedicated and sacrificed his life, Indian people, working in poverty conditions. The guy had 4 degrees, 4 college degrees. He studied the Sorbonne, the equivalent of the law degree. And yet, he was at the NIC office, living on a hamburger a day, wearing, raggedy-ass clothes like we did back then, sleeping on the floor and making those kind of sacrifices for the people. It's those kind of people that will go on till the very end. That's what influenced my work. So that was, it took me a while to really clarify things in my mind. I started this process in 1969. After working with Larry, after meeting with him in September 19th, I said, this is, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And, that I've tried to remain faithful to. it's more than just about purpose and responsibility. It's about the ensuring the survival and existence and future of our people. We should all live like that. We should all live our lives like that. And when I talk about the sacredness of our work, that goes to the very heart and essence of that, the total commitment, the total dedication, and the total sacrifice, if necessary. And I saw much of that with Wounded Knee on February 27th, when the liberation of Wounded Knee started, when the Oglala Sioux Civil Rights Organization and the American Indian Movement and others like the Lakota Treaty Council and other Lakota people came together to do what they had to do, because they were pushed, they had their backs against the wall. They were driven to do that, just like Larry was driven to do what he had to do, because Emmett Garcia did not open up his heart. And he talks about praying for the soul of Larry Casuse 40 years later. He showed that kind of capacity to act human. We wouldn't have had these problems. Larry would have lived a long life, a long, effective, productive life. He was in the process of being a very wise man. His closest friends was the very wise Larry Emerson, PhD, doctorate, very traditional, and he advised Larry on the concept, the belief of false people, the hypocrisy. That's the right way to frame it, I guess. Phil Loretto was another one. He was a member of our core group of Indians Against Exploitation. He's Amos and Cochiti Coelho. He also was a very wise man. It's like they'd been here before. They'd been here in 1680. They'd been here, when we first emerged from the earth. They had very long souls. And they had much to share and to teach. And Larry was the closest to them. Indians Against Exploitation and then UN Cuba Club. But Larry, it was mostly with me. My relationship with Larry was mostly about organizing strategy and tactics and issue analysis and that sort of thing. But I'm not in the wise or imparting wisdom. I don't have that long soul, like Larry Emerson and Phil Loretto did. But we all complement and supplement each other. We all have our strengths to contribute to that movement. It was a core group, Indians Against Exploitation and the UN Cuba Club, a group of maybe 15 of us that created a mass movement that resulted in the disempowerment of Emmett Garcia through mass organizing, mass mobilization. And it took about a month, maybe 6 months, to get Garcia out of there. He was no longer a threat. He was destroyed as a business and politician and as a person. He wasn't arrogant anymore. He was humbled. He was afraid. He couldn't live in Gallup anymore because he was so ashamed to escape to Pine Top, Arizona. He would never return to his hometown and live again. But he wouldn't, it didn't have to be that way. We could have worked together if he had opened his heart. But he did not. So what was done had to be done. But Garcia, he was disempowered, and Navajo was closed and later torn down, demolished, and it's just a it's a road out there, an access road to the McKinley mine, probably appropriately so, leveled. The largest liquor outlet and establishment in the state of New Mexico. We took his money away, his inheritance from his father. He didn't have anything going for him. He made his living being an Indian killer. And, and so, the people's movement was responsible for that. Because, after Larry died, and we buried him at the base of the Chusco Mountains, IAE came over to Kiva Club. First we went to the Frontier, it's still there, the longhorns and everything. And, we met over at the Native American Studies Center, where Native American Studies and the Kiva Club were jointly headquartered. And we said, we have unfinished business with Garcia. We're not letting it away. This is a way to avenge the death of Larry Casuse, to vindicate his righteous cause. And so for the next six weeks, we organized and we mobilized, and we had mass marches. March 24 here in Albuquerque University, downtown, to Robinson Park, rallied the next week, May 31st, 3,000 folks, mostly Native, were there. There were also Chicanos and blacks, and some whites. We shut down that city for a day in honor of Remembrance and honor of Larry Casuse, and in support of our brother and political prisoner Robert Nakai, and in solidarity with the liberation forces at Wounded Knee. We sent a powerful message. It's nothing that Gallup had seen before or has seen since. But it took mobilization, and it basically started over here on 1812, Los Alamos Northeast. He said, we're going to make a difference. In terms of what we're facing, we're going to move mountains. And it took mobilization, mass mobilization, and organizing to do that. It is said that during that period, we didn't sleep, we just organized. And that's the way it was, 24/7. And we succeeded. It was a victory. And so Larry's sacrifice sparked a movement that is part of history and part of good history in terms of ridding one of the enemies of the people, to where he was impotent and weak, and he was nothing. He was just he was the most powerful, probably the most successful businessman in Gallup and McKinley County at that time. We brought him down. He was an arrogant SOB, and we humbled him. Story to Larry, so that sacrifice, and talk about the true meaning and measure of his sacrifice. That's what that set off. So we too were driven to do what we had to do. They would want us to avenge Larry's death by engaging in a firefight, so they'd have an excuse to shoot us, and they'd all be Indian killers, and they'd all pose before the Gallup Independent. Truly well told, because they want to see a bunch of dead Indians out there, and so they could achieve, another victory over us. Well, we weren't going to play into their hands. We did it another way. It took intellect and the power of our collective minds. And Larry Anderson, he's the one that sparked that. We were sitting around the drum line, we talked and developed workable strategies and tactics, and we employed them. And with IAE, at the Gallup end, same thing. Phil Loretto applied the intelligence to the movement and to organizing. And it was just,
in many ways a perfect storm on May 31, 1973. So it was a big part of, it was a big part of my commitment that I made on September 19th to be part of that movement, and since then.
What? Of course there's love.
I was thinking about what John's talking right now in the first step. During that time, there was an article in the paper and it said, this is just how his mindset was. John's all for it, not for his hunger and that. But he said that since he got removed from the border regions, and if he wasn't good for living in the mayor, so he was going to get, that's like law. But he was going to get as much money as he possibly can out of that company. He sold out to bought out the other holders and so many other owners. He got it just because of the that's where his mind was at the office. On partnership. He said he would give 100% to his business, to his business mindset. So it's just bad.
What a disgusting piece of trash. Emma Garcia. But powerful. He had power, right? And it took, thank you for that, Ursula. It took, like you said, unifying the strength of that intellect and those tactics to bring not just him down, but he exemplified the entire machine that is the border town that feeds off of the misery of our people. And that's the thing, what you're describing, you use the phrase moving mountains, right? Really, there are moments in the movement where you actually do move mountains. And people get very discouraged. They use the term demoralized a lot. I think people can be quite nihilistic or fatalistic about movements. Oftentimes these are people who don't participate in movements because maybe they don't know what it feels like to win. And the thing is when you do the movement work, there are a lot of losses. Losing Larry, that was a real loss. But what you all did in the wake of that was turning that, it's a powerful prayer actually, to turn something so negative into something so beautiful. And so to create the bridge to the future, right? And when that is how you go into the work and you do the work, you can move mountains because that's just how it is, right? When you're indigenous and you're coming together and you're just being powerful, you're being yourself and you're being powerful. And I think for me, listening to you as somebody I've only been doing this work for, a little under a decade, so definitely not as long as you. But I have seen the things that are broken, I've seen the losses, I've experienced those very intimately when it comes to, when you really lose in the movement and how devastating that is. But man, I've also moved mountains. And not me, but with people, with our relatives in the struggle. And that's what I was trying to say, is that feeling when you know you're doing that. And I just appreciate you reminding us. You tell the story about that moment in that history where you did that. And we do it now, and we will do it again. And I know there are folks, who might be in the audience or listening who feel like that's not going to happen. Trust me, it's going to happen. We will move mountains again, because that's just what we do. That's what our ancestors did, and that's what our future generations will do. I feel certain about this. And this being said, kind of bringing it maybe to the current moment, the present moment, John, and the movement today, I'm interested in hearing, just because you are a historian, you're somebody who's been a part of the movement for this long period of time, God, you joined the movement when you were really young. You were a teenager, right? Damn. Can you imagine literally giving your whole life to Native liberation, like our Che here has done? I didn't do that. I started this when I was like in my 30s. In my early 30s. You know, I had a whole life as a sad liberal before all of that, you know? And so, what are your reflections on where we are today, on where the movement is today? And I just want to hear you talk also about just like what the future looks like.
Well, my reference, of course, is in the past. We did this without computers and cell phones and things, kind of low tech, and it's kind of a whole different scene, I guess. Kind of hard to conceptualize. Now things, with technology, if we use that for our purposes, and we can control it as practically and ethically as we can, it can be a very powerful tool and weapon. Cell phones, I have one here. The only reason I got one because everybody else had one before I was a landline guy. Before, the old days, you had a smoke signal. Cell phone, I don't like all those cell phones on our sacred mountains. Like commercial phones, it's an antenna farm up there. And, there's positives, positive and negatives about this, but, to the extent that we can use it to advance our struggle, because they have cell phones, the other side has cell phones, and, we can't be, fighting the enemy with pea shooters or, even bows and arrows anymore. We've got to up our arsenal and even things out of it. And, sacrifices, unfortunately, have to be made. I think that with today, we have the capacity to mobilize a lot of people through the internet. And I think that was particularly effective, at least what I've seen, through at Standing Rock. Like in the Alcatraz days, 1969, it was kind of the moccasin telegraph. It's kind of word by, it's really primitive, I guess. Not too hip on the way things are now. Like, I hear good things about the Red Nation, and that they are about the right things, and the Larry Casuse Freedom Center, and the good work that they're doing with the people here, their approach. It reminds me of the food lines that Larry Casuse and Phil Loretto had during the ceremony, and it hadn't been done before. We got down with it, to the people that we're trying to help. And we talked and we listened to them. We didn't preach or we didn't lecture. We talked about the concerns and problems of trying to survive in Gallup, the racism and exploitation and all of that, and got to a real reality check, and that structured a lot of our work and our approach. And it was Phil and Larry who did that. 1970 was part of the ceremonial protests. We really didn't do that. So in 1972, there was during the ceremonial protests, things had really changed a lot, and I liked it. We had some success there in terms of stopping the performance of the ABG dance, and that next year, in 1973, they didn't have a ceremonial. And the same thing with the flag staff, because we really put a zap into it with activism, because we knew we were out there. We were in forces, could strike at any time. Back in the old days, we sat around the drum over at the Kiva Club, neighborhood studies, and we thought, we just thought it up and did it. It was pretty straightforward. It's a pretty straightforward process. I'm not sure how things work, like with Red Nation or Albuquerque AIM or the Catholic shop, or whatever. I know it's a group and collective process, and I see that's something that is very encouraging. I'm not really an internet guy, so I don't know a whole lot about what Red Nation is doing. And Melanie, perhaps you can talk about the program and the roots. To go back, I think Jennifer had a lot to do with it, with protesting the panhandling, the racist panhandling issue in Gallup in the spring and summer of 2014, and the death of two of our brothers on West Mesa, and then the decision to organize Red Nation in December 2014. So those events there, I think, and then the magnificent march the Red Nation mobilized and had on Indigenous Peoples Day in 2015. 1,000 people in the streets. We hadn't seen that since the 1970s. That too encouraged me to say, right on, keep up the good work, and to Red Nation. That made my heart soar like an eagle there. Felt like those days were back again, which we make our statement in the streets, and mobilizing that many people, and affecting the passage of a resolution by the Albuquerque City Council. Making those kind of changes that restore it, but it can also be built on those kind of victories, that process, the process and the impact that it has.
I remember the day that your email came in. You emailed me. I think you maybe emailed me or Nick after we had that march on Indigenous Peoples Day in 2015. I still have that email, by the way. I saved it. I look at it sometimes. Because you were saying that seeing that made your heart soar. Like an eagle, getting that email from you made our hearts soar. Because, right, and when I use that term again, it was such an affirmation. It's like you have these moments, especially when elders, sometimes they'll, not sometimes, they will tell you when you're doing something wrong, and that's fine. That's good. That's how that functions, But it's important also that you understanding the tradition and just the longevity of that commitment and that struggle to recognize and to tell us that what we were doing, it was the right thing. And I'm not necessarily talking as like a young person needing, like the acceptance of an elder to do the right thing. What I guess I'm saying is that, in my time, and, all of us, there are a lot of Red Nation people here right now, many of whom actually have been with us, with the organization from the beginning or close to the beginning. You just kind of know, like when you're planning something, like when you would say you all would sit around the drum at Kiva Club and you would just talk about it, you decide it, and you do it. Like some things we've done have been like total failures, they've been messy or just filled with conflict. And the thing though is that, right, when you decide to do something and you've been doing it long enough, you get this feeling where you're like, this right here, this is going to be another moment where not only are our hearts going to soar, but our people's hearts are going to soar like eagles. And that's what I'm talking about with this feeling of what it feels like to move mountains. And, Red Nation, we have felt that many, many times. There are many times when we haven't. And, there have been a lot of, conflicts and breakups and, a lot of losses along the way. How could there not be when you're struggling for, like, your life, as a collective of people? But I think it's that email from you was one of the very first times, because we were brand new at that time. It was our very first big campaign, where we had this collective feeling together that we were on the right track, that we were like a part of this thing that had been going on for a long time. And that we, in that particular moment and our generation were claiming our rightful place in the history of Native liberation. And like the ensuing years, the 2 or 3 years after that was just a remarkable time, I think. And not just for the Red Nation, we came into existence at a time when there was also a resurgence and a renaissance happening all over Turtle Island, actually. And that was, again, I'm going back to Uleo and Standing Rock. It's hard to explain the feeling, right, of those moments when you're moving mountains and you just keep winning. And I believe, because I'm somebody who is committed to the work now, that we will continue to have those incredible moments where we will win. I do remember this one relative, I'll just say this about Red Nation, and then we can maybe, I don't even know what time we started, maybe a time, but he was reflecting. He's a alum of the NAS program here, and this was maybe like 2016, 2017, and he was kind of trying to wrap his head around the Red Nation, because a lot of people didn't like us. People still don't. They're like, oh, again, they're too militant, they're too political, they're this or they're that. The press really hates us in Gallup and Albuquerque. I mean, who cares? But we were vilified a lot for our quote-unquote tactics and how we went about things. And this relative was kind of trying to wrap his head around, like, what is the Red Nation? Who are these people, showing up on the scene and throwing down this way? And he said, the Red Nation is the group that cannot be stopped. And that's not because the Red Nation is exceptional. That's not because I'm a part of it. It's not because I'm this amazing person. It's because somehow, against all odds, and somehow the stars aligned, that the Red Nation literally was able to, we were in the right place at the right time where that spirit of Larry, where the spirit of Native liberation caught us. It caught us all together, and then we moved mountains together for a long time. And that's that feeling, I guess, I'm talking about. So, yeah, your email was like a blessing. I think in a moment when we were rising, like we were ascending, actually, I think in that moment. So thank you. And the other thing I want to say, John, like a lot of us don't really know you, but like we quite literally talk about you all the time in the Red Nation. We claim you, not just as an elder, but I mean really, like people like you and people like Larry are very present. That you are people who are like active, in what we do, just because of that spirit that caught us, and it won't let go. I guess it's the same spirit that we all share. Those of us who are part of this larger family, I guess, and this larger tradition of this work. So, just thank you is like a terrible way to express the blessing that you are. And that people like Larry are. Yes. For us. You're a gift. I want to give you a present. I don't know what time it is. I actually don't even know what time we started. I'm being a bad facilitator. It's 2. It's 2? Okay. I would like to open it up, if this is okay, unless you have any closing words. So just hear the people speak about anything, about Larry, about anything we've spoken about here. When we did the book launch in April of last year in Gallup, for this book that David authored, and I wrote the foreword for, the most beautiful part of that event was that it awoke, right, that next wave of that strength in our people, and they were like, let's fight again. That happened that night. It was a really transformative night, because the pandemic had been, really challenged our ability to organize in Gallup. And the best thing about that night was seeing our people just speak this way, speak the truth, and really feeling the energy again collectively to get back up and to keep fighting. And, you know, the only reason why I do this work is to inspire the confidence in our people to keep fighting and just keep surviving and to keep being who they are unapologetically, because that's the only way we're going to have a future. So I want to hand it over to the people. If anyone would like to speak, go ahead and come up here and take the mic. I'm going to put a little gift together for John. So, you go ahead. Actually, Erica, why don't we hear from his sister first?
This is a really good turnout. I'm Erica Casuse, Larry's daughter than me. I like to think. And this doesn't mean any particular thing, okay? It's just from my heart. I like to thank Lord Jesus. I like to thank Mother Earth. And I like to thank the Creator. I like to thank the Spirit that is in all of us. And one small thing I would just want to say, I'm so grateful and thankful to this turnout. It seems like it's getting a little larger every year, which is good. Up until that day, and I'd like to thank John Redhouse and Melanie, and I have read several articles of John, very good articles, and just want to say, I was 17 that day, and I was downtown. My sister Najani was right there when Larry was laying on the sidewalk, dead, bleeding everywhere. And it shook my whole entire life. I was never the same because I couldn't understand what was going on. We were raised in a very racial environment. Nobody liked us. We were like the fungus of the mungus, whatever. I mean, nobody liked us. And that included the Dene people. They didn't understand us, but I have seen some good things since then, and especially for the younger people that are beginning to understand. My mother was from Austria, straight from Austria, beautiful white woman, or Beligana, and there was no way a marriage like that could last in this day and age. So people that are the minority, I consider them the special people, we of color. We need to all stand together no matter who we are, because wherever this great white bullshit is that's trying to run this world, it can't happen. We gotta all stick together. And I love you from my heart and our soul. Thanks.
I just wanted to say, thank you for being outspoken. Thank you for being intelligent. Thank you for showing us the truths, what's going on with our lands, our homelands, and because we're so connected, it's who we are. We are our homelands. There's no denial. What happens to our lands happens to us is very much true, and that's why I do this work. I do it for my babies. I do it for their babies. I do it for your babies. I do it for the ones I never met. But as Dr. Melanie is talking about those pivotal moments where we are moving mountains together, it is very much true, and that's why I do this. There was one time we were marching in the streets as the Red Nation, and the coolest moment was, it was like one of the state fair parades or the gay pride parade, and all these indigenous kids came out, and they were marching with us. And we're like, come on, march with us, march with us. And they were like, we're the Red Nation, we're the Red Nation. And my kids were there, my grandkids were there, and we all just came together, and we were just being us, like how we are, all silly and, tease each other and have food for each other, give each other hand sanitizer and water. It was so cool just to see these little kids run around and be who they were, because we were going to protect them. And they could say whatever they want. And they were like, that's right, we're reclaiming Albuquerque as ours. These are our indigenous lands. All of this is indigenous lands. And so I never let my grandchildren forget that as we walk around in this space, because we did. We claimed this. We even claimed this here. This is a terrible space because there's so much stolen stuff here. I don't know if you all know that. Like in the basement, it's very much, there's so much stolen items from our people. But those are the things that keep me alive, is when I hear those things, our next generations, and I see you all doing the things and sitting there learning your language, cooking, like, wow, it's so humbling, it's so wholesome. There's no denying that. And when we get emails and letters from Che, John Redhouse, from Che Leonard Peltier, like that's, I get to sit around with women who are at Wounded Knee, and we're telling each other stories of what happens in the movements and what you all don't see when you're not there. And how we're keeping each other alive, and how we're keeping our babies safe from police violence. From white people trying to take from us, take. And we're just here to show up and give. By the way, I'm here to give. I'm not here to take anything. So when we have those little things of saying thank you, we're proud of you, what? My dad never told me that. There's my Che, my legend is telling me this. It's everything to me. That's it. I don't need you to buy me anything. I don't need that. Those material things don't mean anything to me. For him to say the Red Nation is doing good work, like, yeah, thank you for telling me that, because I need to hear it. I need to know when I'm doing good. I need to know when I hurt you. And that's how we stay connected, right? Is being that human relative and being good to each other. So, yeah, I was checking for all you do, and my baby gets to feel your energy, and it means so much to me.
I'm not going to use the mic because I have a balance thing. I'm a Viva Kempner, and when I was 24 years old, I came here as a VISTA volunteer. Well, I can't hold and talk at the same time. It's a balance issue.
Would you like me to hold it for you?
Yes, that would, if you don't mind.
Would you mind coming over?
Yeah, sorry. So I was lucky enough to be a VISTA volunteer. Came here, it was the design center. I was supposedly an urban planner. My life changed being here in 72 and 73. And what I thought I was going to come and just cry, and of course I did as soon as I saw Larry's sisters. But I am so excited about seeing this next generation. The panel before here, like Larry lives. And let me say, it's Larry Emerson too. Please, if someone's going to do archival work, find Larry's writings. Larry Emerson was beautiful. He did all these wonderful writings. And of course, John has always been my hero. But I just want to add a little things. The mayor of Garcia has the greatest chutzpah of anyone I have ever met. I've been doing political work for 60 years. To have the balls to own a liquor store and then get money from alcohol rehabilitation center has to be the biggest story of chutzpah. Chutzpah is a word in Yiddish when a kid kills his parents and pleads mercy in the court that he's an orphan. That's chutzpah, and that's what Garcia did. And I think it should be shown time and time again. let me just say, every time you go into the frontier from now on, know that we were all plotting things. That is the location of where a lot of things went on. The the design center around the corner. It's when I met Casuse and said, hey, we're planning, we're doing the drawings for the rehabilitation center. And I secretly, and if I had gotten caught, they would have fired me. I gave them the drawings. And then the guys went on from there. Do your research on your enemy. That's what Larry and John and Larry did. It's the most important thing. It's not just a legal thing. It's to be political. You got to do it. These guys and gals did it with no email and no cell phone. Can you imagine when I was in the frontier yesterday and I saw the payphone, I said, damn it. They did it as organizing the really hard work in terms of that. Again, I would hope people would research all the stuff they did. After Larry was murdered, a lot of us got together and we raised money for Robert's bail. I was one of the organizers. We need to do more research on that because very famous artists gave work. I remember going next door to Tamarack and getting, I know Fritz Scholder and other people did it, and Dennis Hopper. You all know the actor Dennis Hopper? He was the auctioneer. That is a great story. Anyone doing a thesis in the next year or two? There's your thesis right there. Let me just say one more thing. Oh, Larry did have a girlfriend. The family and I are disputing it, but there was an Irene. He did have fun. We did go to Okies. We drank too much. And we did dance. So come on, sometimes have some fun. I will not talk to you about how this nice Jewish girl, middle-class Jewish girl from Detroit went totally wild coming to Albuquerque. But the most important thing is, I learned about another people. I'm the child of a Holocaust survivor. I learned and I understood what genocide was. And the thing is, do reach out to the other communities because together, you know, Joe Hill had a great line, go, mourn, organize. And the line, the people united will never be defeated. Remember, do your own work, lead the way, but don't forget us to include us. The other thing about Larry's father is he was first a POW and then he enlisted more. He was a very courageous soldier during World War II. My father was too. And I have co-written a script with Ben West, who couldn't be here. He's Cheyenne. His father started and ran the Museum of the American Indian in Washington. Ben's next film is on Native American, soldiers and people involved in armed services. It is a tradition. As far as I'm concerned, Larry was as brave as his father. I mean, the girls can talk, the sisters can talk more about it. And I think that's really important to know. What inspired me is I and Ben West again have just finished a film called Imagining the Indian, a fight against Native American mascotting. It's opening up all around the country. I'm going to try to get it at the Cinema Guild, and it's dedicated to Larry Anderson, Larry Casuse, and many, many leaders of your movement or present-day leaders are in it. We need to get rid of the Atlanta's baseball team's name. We need to get rid of Kansas City's name. We got to get rid of Chicago Blackhawks. But more importantly, there are 2,000 more teams. So if you want to get involved in showing the film, getting the word out, come look for me after. And if you want to get involved in the dramatic film, also come. Thank you.
We gotta clean up. Oh, we have to end. So real quick before we end, you know, John, you and I were talking about this before we did this. We need to do something to honor Larry. Last night, I got emotional at the Kiva Club event, and I sang an honor song. It's a Warrior Woman song for Larry. If anyone here knows an honor song and would grace us with that song, please let me know. You can come up here and do that. You can? the most venerated political chant in the history. And Larry, John, I don't know if you want to lead us in a chant or a salute to Larry. Would you feel comfortable doing that? Okay, real quick, because they're going to kick us out.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that, every memorial doing this for Larry. Because Larry was, when I was a little girl, he was my hero. So, he was just always there for me as a little kid. He was my inspiration for a lot of things. I wanted to grow up and follow him when I was a little girl. And I'm just real thankful for that. And I agree with everything Erica said. I do my best to be spiritual. I have a higher power that I look forward to speaking to every day. And Larry's always right by him. It's amazing the way that works. But there's some things going on in Gallup starting tomorrow. And everyone's welcome. You guys could bring that all up. And I'd like to thank David. I love David's book, especially the way he brings up my parents, because they were very courageous people too. Both of them were the type of people, when they walked into a room, everyone would turn. And I'm pretty sure Larry was like that too. I was too young to see that, to witness that, but I witnessed it with my parents. Very good people. But thank you again for being here for my brother.
Wrap it up. Okay, John, do you feel comfortable? No? Jennifer? Would you like me to sing an honor song?
Yes.
Really quickly, they're going to kick us out, but, this is Indigenous space, so whatever.
That's right.
Okay? So this song, those of you who were at the event last night, you heard me talk about this, but this song was crafted by First Nations women incarcerated, Cree women, in so-called Canada. And they started this song and they would sing it together regularly to keep their spirits up because they were trapped, right? They were in a place which was the opposite of being free. And so we started singing this in the Red Nation a couple of years ago. We sing it in ceremonies, we sing it on the front lines. It's a song that these women wanted shared across Turtle Island to inspire all of us, right? To remember what it's like to be free. And the reason why I thought about the song when we're talking about Larry is because Larry inspires us all to be free, right? So if any of my Red Nation folks who know this song want to sing with me, please feel free. And then we'll wrap up.